Movies and television are definitely a driving force, a cultural phenomenon here in America. After all, I just made a whole entire channel devoted to this stuff. Of course, I used to review principally music, and I still do, over at my other review channel, Cover Killer Nation. For those of you who have come over from Cover Killer Nation, what's about to happen will seem very familiar to you. This is a section where I'm going to do nothing but really give my opinion. And I'm going to try to do so as shortly as possible and kind of as concisely as possible. That way the debate that is going to be kind of forming and spawning based around this, well, that'll be a good way for me to address some of those topics in future episodes. Things that perhaps concern you, or things in which you think I'm wrong about. Or maybe I can plead my case. You call this real discussion, you call this real opinion, you call this really whatever you want. But we're here to talk about the state of movies and television shows today. I nearly said music, principally because there is a bit of a similarity between the two. For those of you who know me as Cover Killer Nation, you know that the state of music today is one that is dominated by a lot of plastic artistry. It's something that really a lot of artists are getting tons of attention, not to mention the most sales, while making music that can be considered by many to be kind of generic and lifeless. You can easily directly correspond that to movies today. Not so much television shows, though. With movies, you can definitely see in the blockbusters something that has a little bit of life to it, at least from a visual standpoint. Big visuals are certainly a huge aspect of movies today with the push to 3D and all of the other things. But at the same time, it's the story writing, it is the overall script building, not to mention the character development that seems to have suffered. It's something where the visual element and the advancement in the technology of said visual element really seems to be the dominating force. It seems to be the idea that it has the principal focal point right now within Hollywood's industry. This is not the same as it was a couple of years ago, and by a couple I mean a couple of decades ago, where character development and building elaborate story arcs and arcs that were able to be followed even if they had a little bit of complexity to them were definitely something that was major. You would think that with today, with a lot of these movies being based around books that were very popular in the mainstream culture, this would not be a difficult thing. But whenever you kind of get lost in the heightened effect and the visual spectacle, it sometimes becomes a little bit more difficult to focus on another area. Either that, or you do focus on that area, but it's kind of shielded by the fact that the visuals are so magnificent that you almost have viewers ignoring the overall story that surrounds it. That said, with movies, there's also the opportunity for diamonds in the rough to be found, but they won't be found by a wide population. It's no longer a time frame where you're going to have a movie such as The Silence of the Lambs, which is based off of a novel, yes, but really take control of basically the movie buying and the movie watching empire for a year. It was a huge movie, a movie that almost didn't get made, and even whenever it was being made, definitely didn't seem like it was going to see its final completion period actually met. It didn't look like it was going to happen, even after it was scripted to happen. As a result, this is one of the biggest movies of all time, not to mention it's also one of the best. It's something that definitely occupies various top 10 lists, whether it be top 10 movies of all time, either that or top 10 most horrifying villains, with Hannibal Lecter. Surprises like that don't happen very often because these aren't the things that are talked about in our culture. In our culture, we have so many big-name blockbusters that are being dropped based on characters that we already know, either that or based around individuals that we already know. Blockbuster actors, whether that or it be a blockbuster book, something that was a huge book series such as The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, Twilight in recent years, where that really overshadows a lot of the smaller movies from really having a genuine opportunity in order to really shine and really be the sleeper hit. Sleeper hits are a little bit harder to find. They're not as obvious as they were before. And of course, with the myriad of children's movies that have come out that are really employing a lot of just dazzling visual effects to go along with the storylines that they've written, and not to mention children's movies have always done well because kids do like movies and it's kind of good family entertainment. A good family outing is something that is desperately and sorely always needed in American culture today. It's kind of hard, once again, dually now, to find that diamond in the rough. I also feel that Hollywood today has a real problem whenever it comes to creativity. Creativity is something that can be defined in many different ways. You can do something a different way that has already been done, either that, or you can try to do something completely brand new. In the 1980s, we definitely saw a lot of visual leaps, and something where you really had to use your noggin, use a little bit of creativity if you were in the visual department of a movie studio in order to make some of the characters really come to life. That said, directors and writers and individuals that are writing these stories definitely had a lot larger imaginations than it seems that they do today. Either that, or they're willing to take more risks. Perhaps this is something that's more so in the production companies and the larger empires that are kind of shielding these ideas because they may seem too radical. Either that, or something that seems that audiences would not be interested in, based around the fact that it's on a fantasy realm that no one's ever heard of. There's a great deal of drive and desire to have these realms be already familiar to the viewer, as opposed to really creating new ones, and creating ones that could potentially become new empires by themselves. For that reason, many of the blockbusters that we've seen that have been serialized have been based around novels that have happened already. Either that, or they've gotten sequels based around high or at least moderate numbers from their very first movie. Grown Ups being a great example with Grown Ups 2, but we also have Insidious and Insidious Part 2. The Last Exorcism got a sequel, which I don't know why that's even really necessary. And One Missed Call got One Missed Call 2 and 3, even though the first one wasn't even worth its weight in shit. Based around that, it also shows a lack of creativity because of all of the different sequels. We're trying to put these characters in different situations, and it almost seems like the era of the sequel has been because of the era of television. The era of television being, really, out of the two, the one that has the better programming and the better stories. Television within the past 15 years has not suffered at all. In fact, if anything, there's an industry boom that's currently going on. That's why there's so many shows that are in development. That's why every single television station now needs to have their own original programming in order to really compete in the market today. Even if you have some Channel 300 that is, on your digital package or something like that, they have to have their own unique and original programming in order to really survive, or feel as though they can survive. Even if it's something that's only watched by a niche population, it is still something that gets a lot of viability and attracts a lot of fans because there are so many different options out there. That being said, the network television shows actually have not suffered whatsoever. We have huge shows that are currently going strong throughout seasons 5 and 6, or even early on. Shows like The Walking Dead, The Big Bang Theory, Sons of Anarchy. There's a lot of shows that we just lost also that were huge empires by and large within their own right, such as Dexter, such as Breaking Bad. We have had an era of huge, huge television shows that have certainly left their mark culturally on not only a nation, but also on an individual viewer. And that's the reason why these have been followed so closely on a week-by-week basis. That's the reason why it seems as though there's a lot more originality to be had on this end than on the Hollywood end, which is a shame. Because Hollywood has also enjoyed some fantastic box office successes. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, which are based on comic books, have been some of the largest grossing films in history. They've done exceptionally well. And it's based around characters that were always on a comic book sheet of paper, animated, and brought to life through the words that they said and the situations that they were in, and the unique imaginations of those that decided to read them. But now they have jumped to the silver screen, and the result has been nothing short of magical. It's almost like the very first time that you ever brought a larger-than-life character that was not a movie star to life. You just saw how well the transition resonated to audiences, and just how well that character and that actor playing that character was able to bring them to life, almost as though you were sitting in that movie theater and having a conversation or watching their life for 2 hours. It's very much very similar. The problem that I do see, however, is that aside from all of these blockbusters, a lot of the other movies that have been released are kind of lost in the fog, lost in this devious void of, over-ambition, either that or under-ambition. Over-ambition based around visual effect and lacking of a storyline, either that or over-ambition whenever it comes to a very, very complex storyline that just kind of lacks all sort of character development and movement, something that really just draws on, either that or it goes way too fast. The balancing act right now is not one that's been done very, very well. It's also something where I've definitely noticed, and I think all of America has noticed throughout the course of the past couple of decades, where the happy ending has to be the ending. And that's something that American culture really, really needs to get out of its head. There is definitely something that can be said about movies that have either a less than happy, a less than stellar, or a very tragic ending, mainly because it leaves you changed. It leaves a viewer definitely changed whenever they leave the movie theater and they go home after being on this long ride, this perhaps 2.5-hour ride, only to have a tragedy befall everybody, or just the main character, the person who you've latched onto the most, and have that tragedy effectively end everything. It may seem like a way in which there is no happily ever after. It may seem very anti-Disney princess. However, this is something that definitely makes the ride and makes the whole entire experience worth it, mainly because it's something that really shows a story that has a finite beginning, a finite body, and a finite endpoint, as opposed to one that's reopened for interpretation over and over and over again, which constantly opens up the ability for sequels, which opens up the Pandora's box of lazy writing. Grown Ups 2, beautiful example of that. So what do you guys think the state of film and television is today? Is this one that you're beamingly positive about, whether it be in the film or television front, or is this one where you feel that there's a lot of problems in society, a lot of problems in the industry as well? Let me know in the comments below. Please like and subscribe this channel, and we will talk to you guys next time on the next edition of, well, actually, why don't you suggest a title for this?